Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. You'll hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and writers that cover the NFL on a daily basis. The New Orleans Saints podcast starts right now. Here's your host, Erin Summers.
Personally, I haven't got to get a taste of a win, starting any game. So, hopefully we'll be able to. But, I know these guys in this locker room, this team is not going to just lay down and quit. We're going to come back to work and, just grind and finish this season out. But, it's tough. It's a really good team that we just played, and they had a great scheme.
Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast and happy Christmas Eve. Merry day before Christmas. I don't exactly know the right phrasing here, but Erin Summers, John DeShazier. We are talking after the 34-0 loss at Green Bay, Monday Night Football. It was a tough go for the Saints, JD. When it was all said and done, was there anything in particular that stood out to you, or was it a multitude of things that just didn't go right?
Well, first, it might be Happy Holidays. I don't know exactly what it is either. but yeah, what stood out to me was that Green Bay's a really good team, and when you play a good team, and the Saints have done that a few times this season, when you play a good team and you don't play up to your level, and you don't have your top line people anyway, but when you don't play to a certain level, certain standard, you turn the ball over, you commit penalties, that team can pretty much ransack you, and that's what Green Bay did. I mean, Green Bay ran the ball. They piled up twice as many yards as the Saints. They almost doubled them up in time of possession. They forced a couple of turnovers. It was just one of those things where the Saints, I'd hate to say, got little brothered, but I mean they played a better team on paper that looked like a better team on the field, looked like a much vastly better team on the field. And if you don't play to a clean standard, and the Saints have rarely done that this season. But this was one of those teams where you couldn't get away with that because they're just too good for that. And they didn't. And on top of that, once they played clean, and the Saints couldn't force any turnovers. They couldn't force any mistakes out of Green Bay. Even when they had Green Bay in some good situations, some 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, if you commit a neutral zone infraction and you knock it down to 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, well, you're pretty much handing things on the platter to a team that's already better than you are. So it's just one of those things where it could have been a whole lot worse than it was. And 34-0 is nothing to sneeze at, but it probably could have been worse.
This is something that Scott Shanley and I talked about last night on the post-game show, is the fact that Green Bay is a really good team. And there's really no other way to say it except that the Saints, it's almost like they have their second string out there because of the injuries. And it is what it is. And I hate to continue to harp on the injuries, but it is a real thing.
Yeah, it's real. I mean, you can't make excuses, but, the fact of the matter is, Spencer Rattler is the backup quarterback. The fact of the matter is Kendre Miller is the number 3 running back, practically because of Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill. The fact of the matter is, if you don't have Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who was probably the number 4 receiver or so, you don't have Chris Olave and you don't have Rashid Shaheed, so you're down to your 4th, 5th, 6th receivers, that kind of thing. The only frontline guys out there were the offensive line, and Eric McCoy, unfortunately, takes a elbow injury in that game and leaves, and other frontline guys on offense are your tight ends.
Yeah.
But if you don't have, I don't want to say the proper practice, because they do practice together, but it's totally different once you get in the game. And yeah, it was Spencer Rattler's 4th start, but each of those has been a learning experience where each defense probably threw a little bit something different at him, where, you see some things on the film and that particular defensive coordinator says, okay, we're getting a rookie quarterback, so we're going to get a little bit more exotic, show him some different things and see if he can pick him up. And, oh, by the way, he doesn't have his top 4 receivers or so. So we're going to see if those receivers can beat us man to man and those kinds of things. So it's just one of those things where, you're injured. You don't want to make excuses, but it is real. It is a fact, hard, cold, on paper, that the Saints are playing with some guys who otherwise would not be playing.
Yeah. And each time that Spencer has played, he's had different people around him. Coming into this game last night, he was really excited about having a healthy offensive line there and Eric McCoy. But you mentioned he goes out early with that elbow injury, and it changes the dynamic of things. Shane Lemieux is plugged in, and then Eric McCoy is such a difference maker. And for him not to be on the field, it does have an effect.
Yeah, Eric McCoy is basically like your starting quarterback. He's running the offensive line. He knows the protections. He knows the blocking schemes. So you lose that experience, and not just that experience, because people can know what to do and not be able to do it. Eric knows what to do, and he's able to do it. A very talented player. So you lose that, and then you lose Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and you say, well, he's only been around for a month and a half, but he's been a valuable contributor in that
Mm-hmm.
month and a half. He's been a threat that's been somewhat reliable for the Saints, that you've got a guy who, if they want to play you man to man, he can run past people. He can stretch defenses. You have to account for him. Well, Green Bay looks around, and no offense, but Green Bay sees Cedric Wilson Jr., they see Mason Tipton. They see some guys on the field who they feel pretty good about being able to cover.
Mm-hmm.
And so now suddenly you can do some things defensively that maybe you thought you couldn't do, but as soon as you learn that MVS is out of the game, you say, well, okay, we don't have to run these schemes because they don't have that guy who can run through our secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least we don't think they have that guy that can run through our secondary. So now suddenly you're talking about a whole different thing, and it's just one of those. And Kevin Austin Jr. was out of the receiver too. It's just one of those things where you're so deep into the depth chart where you never imagined you would be. If you're the Saints, you never imagined to begin this season that Kevin Austin Jr. is going to have to be starting at receiver in a game. You never imagined that Kendre Miller was going to be the bell cow. You thought he might be playing some snaps, but you didn't know that he was going to have to be the bell cow in the game. You never imagined that you'd be playing musical chairs and rotating at center this much in the
Yeah.
season, where Connor McGovern has started, and Eric McCoy has started, and Shane Lemieux has started, and I think Lucas Patrick has gotten snaps.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's been just a total, when you're talking about injuries, it's been a total disaster of a season from that standpoint, because you cannot possibly get any continuity when you're constantly rotating and trying to figure things out and trying to plug and play. And again, I always say the next man up there's a reason he's the next man. And unfortunately, the Saints have done a lot of next man up this season, and it just has not been beneficial for the team, unfortunately, because when you're playing your backups against their starters constantly, it's going to catch up to you in the NFL.
Yeah. And I'm sure the fans are going to be frustrated with the loss, not scoring at all. The two times you do get into a threatening situation, field goal range, you have the fumble and the interception on the offense. Spencer Rattler was very honest and transparent about the situation, and he took a lot of it on himself, saying that, there were some mistakes that he made, which is going to continue to happen. Again, you don't have the people around you that you should have when you're starting a game. That's going to have an effect on it. And then the decision on the interception, he said he should have thrown it away quicker. The fumble, I don't know if the ball just fell. I don't know what happened on that, but
Well, I think the Packers actually knocked that one out. They got him from behind, and that's a good play by them. Again, they're surrounding him, they're swarming him in the pocket. He's trying to maneuver out, and I think they were able to knock that one out of his hand. So on that one, I don't necessarily, and the interception, it looked like a young guy play where he
yeah.
made a misread. I mean, he thought the guy was open. They baited him, and it turned into an easy interception. And it can look that way because they show you one look, they switch into another. You think you got a guy open, and you don't all of a sudden. So, and that's not to absolve him of it. It's just to say that young guys do young stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And young guys do young stuff, especially when they don't have frontline guys playing with them, because there's really been no established chemistry between him and the receivers that he's probably trying to throw the ball to. Most of the time, they're guys he's been working scout team with for the
Yeah.
for the majority of the season. And working scout team is totally different than working your own stuff. You're working
Mhm.
the opponent's stuff,
Mhm.
not your own. So, you don't build up that chemistry because you have not been running your plays with those players. And when you run those plays in practice, it's been minimal reps that you've had with those guys. So, it's hard to say, well, this is where he likes the ball placement.
Mhm.
Well, if I see this coverage, I can depend on him to make this read as a receiver. Those are things that have to develop over time, and the Saints have not had that time.
Yeah. It's hard to evaluate Rattler's performance given the circumstances. Even, earlier this season, I think people were understanding of that with the changes on the offensive line. I mean, it was more than just the center when he was in earlier, but I think he has shown that he's has the confidence, he has the athletic ability, and maybe you continue to give him a chance here these last two games if quarterback Derek Carr isn't able to go.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like he's got some stuff. And now the Saints drafted Spencer Rattler in the fifth round. They said he was a developmental guy. And Spencer Rattler has looked like a developmental guy.
Mm-hmm.
But his development probably would be accelerated if he was playing with the frontline guys routinely. And that's something that, I understand it's a bottom line business. It's wins, losses. That's the only thing that matters. There are no asterisks in the one loss column saying you didn't have your number two receiver or you didn't have your number one running back. There's nothing in the standings that accounts for that. So from one standpoint, he simply has to play better. He's got to
Yeah.
make better decisions when he does play. He's got to be cleaner. But the flip side is, again, he's a rookie. He's making his fourth NFL start and his fifth NFL appearance. He's only had one half where he's looked really clean, and that was the second half against Washington that he
Yeah.
came in. So he doesn't have a vast deal of experience like other rookie quarterbacks who have started from week one. And even if he started from week one, with the way the Saints have had to jumble the lineups, I don't know if he'd be
Mm-hmm.
better, obviously, because he did have more experience.
Right.
But he hadn't had the guys that you would say that are the frontline guys that you want to be working with. So, you go to Green Bay on a Monday night and Alvin Kamara isn't playing and Marquez Valdez-Scantling isn't playing. Those probably are the last two real threats offensively that opponents look at and say, okay, we got to account for. Well, now suddenly it's like, okay, you're going into a gunfight with a pocket full of rocks. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
just don't have the guys that you need
It
to be
reminded me
put up
of,
a
you
fight.
remember the Miami game that Ian Book started?
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a COVID game where so
Right.
many guys were out with COVID, and it was like the Saints basically ran out a a, a Division three team against an SEC team. I guess the equivalent is what people would look at. And it was one of those, and I mean it wasn't to that level
Yeah.
totally Monday night, but it was fairly close to it because when you're out there and you're that shorthanded, and again, we don't want to make excuses, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You look at it on paper and you see where all these players were on the depth chart going into training camp.
Yeah.
Some of them were not even on the depth chart.
Yeah.
Some of these guys were not even, a couple of them might not have been in the organization. So you're talking about,
Or an organization.
yeah, yeah. So and organization. So you're
Yeah.
talking about, really scraping as much as you can. So, you know, I, I I'm not a moral victory guy, but I almost feel for Rattler because it's like, man, you just don't know how good he might be, can be, would be if he had frontline guys, but you're just not going to find out because it's been that kind of season.
Mhm. I mean, he's taken it well. I have to commend him with him standing up there last night and the way he's handled it all. He could be really frustrated, and he didn't really put the blame anywhere else but himself. What did you make of the run game by the Saints? Because I mean, you knew Kendra Miller was kind of all you got, but then as the game went on, you kept seeing Jordan Mims get the ball more.
Well, Green Bay said, well, okay, we've seen this Kendra Miller guy, we've seen some tape on him, so we're going to take him away because they don't have frontline receivers, and they got a rookie quarterback, so we feel like we can blitz or we can make it exotic and we can mix it up and we can beat the front line and we can stop the run. So basically, they took that away. So I think the Saints pretty much had to go to Jordan Mills because when they did it, he was productive a couple of times, and you got to kind of ride the hot hand, so to speak, especially when you're down. You're down 14 nothing before you can almost you know,
Hmm.
exhale. Then they score on the top three possessions, and one of those I think was a 96-yard drive, like 17 plays, and maybe that was the second one where your defense can't get off the field, your offense is standing over on the sidelines just waiting, and it's
Hmm.
one of those where Jordan Mims goes out there, he gives you a little something, and you look around and you say, okay, maybe we got to ride this a little bit, but and also you got to factor in. I think there was some issues with protections in terms of running backs with Spencer Rattler last night. So you got to get somebody out there who, if they're going to be sending extra people, your running back's got to know who to pick up. He's got to
Hmm.
know who to block. You can't have your guy just out there, and they're sending the blitz and they're coming off the edge and they're coming clean routinely, and you're dependent on Spencer Rattler to make not just one guy miss, but maybe have to make two guys missing. And that's unfair to put on Spencer Rattler as a rookie. So you got to get somebody out there and Jordan Mims has actually probably been in this system this season
Yeah.
longer than Kendre Miller because
Oh, absolutely.
he's been healthy. So he knows the blitz pickup schemes and he knows he knows this offense a little bit better probably than Kendre Miller. So you've got to accommodate for that when you've got a rookie quarterback out there who needs all the protection he can possibly get and he's not receiving it. And it's Monday Night Football in Green Bay's, really not breathing smoke because it was just cold, but breathing like, hey, we got us one. We can rattle him, and they're doing everything they can to make sure they get him on the ground and beat him up.
Hmm. Defensively, the Saints allow 34 points, those three touchdowns on the first three drives by Green Bay, but then they hold him to two field goals in the second half. Malik Willis comes in, backup quarterback late in the game, and scores another touchdown. But it did seem like the defense, I don't know, locked in a little bit more in the second half. We're playing things a little bit better.
Yeah, but that's one of those where it's kind of hollow because how much of that is Green Bay saying, okay, we're up 21-0. We don't want to make sure you want to make sure we keep everybody safe. We want to stay healthy.
Right. Josh Jacobs wasn't playing anymore.
Yeah, we're going to get a little bit more conservative because we've kind of accomplished the goal, and they're looking at this. They're looking across the field, saying, you know what, we don't think that team can score 22 and a half. So you Green Bay, you're like, okay, we can run it a little bit more because they did that in the second half. They ran a lot more with the backup running back, as you mentioned, Josh Jacobs on the sideline. Josh Jacobs, thank God he went out of the game because it seemed like he broke 50 tackles during the game.
Gosh, I know.
And so so the defense, I don't know I don't think the defense takes any solace in this one because I mean, when you're on the field for a touchdown drive and they go 17 plays, 96 yards, and take 9 minutes off the clock, they have pretty much done what they want against you. Because if you're a defense, you're saying, okay, we want to make them take the long, hard road. We figure they'll make a mistake somewhere along the way and we'll be able to get off the field. Well, they were 17 plays in 9 minutes. 17 plays, that's a lot in any game. That's a lot. And it didn't look like the Saints. I mean, they got them into some third down situations, but I mean, Green Bay was real confident. They were like, okay, we can get this. And then they got them in a couple of fourth down situations, and the Packers was like, okay, 4th and 1, we got this.
Yeah, they
So
were 3 for 3 on fourth down.
yeah, so it's one of those situations where the Saints defense just didn't put up on a night where if the Saints were going to win this game, the defense had to win it. They had to win it, and they didn't put up. They didn't account for themselves well at all.
Yeah. There was an almost interception.
Yeah,
Colin
yeah,
Saunders had a great tip and he tipped it back to himself, but then there was a collision there and it looked like Alante Taylor was trying to go for the ball as well and it ended up on the ground.
yeah, one of those nobody fault kind of plays. I mean, Bink made a great play to bat it up in the air. He's probably going to pick it. Yeah, we say probably because he got the interception against Kansas City on Monday night, so we feel like he's going to
The
get that.
same
But
way, really.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it just would have been great to see the big guy get one and rumble again. But Alante sees a free ball, and Alante's like, "Hey, free ball, ball," and everybody's going at it. But that kind of encapsulates the whole defensive game because it's like, here's a free ball, here's a chance for the Saints to get it, and they can't come up with it clean, and Green Bay gets another bite at it. So,
Mhm.
whether it was a punt or whether it was another play, it was like Saints defense could have had a turnover, could have given the offense the ball in great position, if they get the pick clean, maybe they get some positive yards out of it. Maybe they even ramble into the end zone with it. But it's one of those where, you looked at it and it's like, you know what, that's kind of appropriate for this game. That's
Mhm.
kind of what this game's been.
The moment that you could say that on the offensive side was when Spencer Rattler had that jump ball to Dante Pettis. It was amazing throw, but then the next throw was an interception.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the rookie peering through the rookie window. You make a fantastic play on a play that's, basically you make out of nothing. And how many passes are guys able to make with both feet off the ground? And he's not in any kind of fundamental position to make that throw. Just
No.
total arm throw, just arm talent. And it's one of those where, it was like, wow, what in the world was that? Even though it's not a touchdown, but it's like, man, that's spectacular. And then he comes back and he makes the poor read on the interception where, that's the spectrum that you get with a rookie, I guess.
Yeah, there were moments like that that you said, well, yep, I mean, that's kind of how this game is going. I think early on in the game, you kind of tell just the talent disparity. Green Bay was doing everything that they wanted. Saints couldn't get anything going. Where do you go from here? You got two more games.
Well, you're playing a Raiders team that unfortunately for the Saints, I guess, hadn't quit because they just won their last game. So you
Yeah.
figure, they're going to limp in here and they're going to be looking at they're going to be looking at the off-season schedule and where they're going on vacation, but they have not quit. So it's a situation where now if Derek Carr is not able to play, and we've got to remind folks that Derek Carr technically remains in concussion protocol because he has
Right.
not played. So he's going to have to practice. Once he does practice, you have to determine whether he can secure the football with his left hand, whether he can protect himself, number one, and whether he can secure the football. I guess you could play the entire game in the shotgun. You could. It's been done before. But at some point, that quarterback's going to get hit, and he's going to have to brace himself when he falls. And so, can Derek Carr protect himself, in that situation? And now you're talking about a Derek Carr who has not practiced for what we're leaning into 3 weeks pretty much.
Hmm.
So you're talking about Derek Carr having to go out there and establish hopefully some chemistry with some guys that he has not been throwing the football to. He has
Right.
not been practicing with.
Right.
So you lean that into it, and now I guess I'll knock wood and hope that Eric McCoy can play. If Eric McCoy's not playing, now you're talking about another adjustment on the offensive line. And as far as I can remember, this team did not win a game where Eric McCoy was injured and didn't play. And then
Right.
on Monday Night Football, he gets injured and you lose that one 34-0. But it has not been a good run of it when Eric McCoy has not been on the field for this team at center. So you add Derek Carr in that mix, and we know he wants to play. Nobody questions Derek Carr's heart. We don't question, his desire. And look, now I think there should be less questions about Derek Carr's execution
Well,
because
yeah, his abilities. Yeah.
because sometimes folks be careful what you wish for, okay?
Mhm.
Because and we've been trying to say this entire season, Derek Carr is a good quarterback. You know, there are very few. I hate to throw names out there. There are very few Josh Allens and Patrick Mahomeses and Lamar Jacksons in the world,
Mhm.
much less in the NFL. So Derek Carr has played really good football at times for the Saints. Has played really good football at times for the Saints this season.
Yeah.
In fact, I think Darren Rizzi pointed it out. Derek Carr is 3-1 as the quarterback with Darren Rizzi as the interim coach, and he's completed like 68% of his passes. So there's some effectiveness there. Getting him back on the field will be of some solace, but you got to have him back out there, and you got to hope that you get Alvin Kamara back out there. We don't know Alvin's status.
Yeah.
You got to hope you get Marquez Valdez-Scantling back out there, and his absence was due more injury related than
Mhm.
illness related. So, if he's injury related, can he get back on the field again? So, yeah, it'll be good to have Derek Carr back out there.
Somebody else that's going to be playing against a former team is Foster Moreau. And I think he honestly has had the most consistent season. He's played really well. He's made plays in each game. I think you kind of get a little more juiced up playing against your former team, obviously here in the Superdome. So what are you expecting from Foster on Sunday?
But Warren Foster's a juice guy all the time, right? He's kind of, he's kind of maniacal at times. But yeah, his production has gone up, and there's no coincidence. He works at it. He's been a reliable target for the quarterbacks, and he's made some acrobatic catches. Made 2 catches for 33 yards on Monday night against Green Bay, but one of those was a fantastic catch down the middle where he's got to go up in traffic, and they kind of fit it in, and he makes a play out of it. He basically made Spencer Rattler right, because it was one of those throws that easily could have been a pick. So him going out there, at least you've got something that seems like a security blanket for the quarterback, whether that be Spencer Rattler or it's Derek Carr. But at least you have somebody out there that you feel like is pretty reliable, and they've gotten some reliable production, it seems like, out of the tight end the last few games. Mm-hmm. And they're going to have a lot more of it, probably because you don't have your receivers. So you better have some production from somewhere. If you don't feel like you can get it from the running backs, and you don't necessarily know if you can. If you don't feel like you can get it from the receivers, you don't necessarily know if you can. You're throwing some guys out there hoping to get some production. Then it's going to have to come from somewhere. And it looks like it might have to be the tight ends. And Foster Moreau has been that guy for this team, lately. And hopefully he can keep it up against his old team.
How difficult do you think it's going to be this week with the schedule? Because you had the Monday night game. They have Christmas Day off. You're not doing much today. It's a short week. It's already a short week, and it's kind of shorter with the holiday.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those where you got to get guys off their feet. You got to get them rested. You got to get them prepared for the next game. You got to get them recuperated and recovered as much as you possibly can. How do you do that and still give them the proper information to be able to execute on a Sunday with a game plan? So it's a fine line, and fortunately we don't have to walk it, but I'm sure, even though the players aren't going to be in the building the next 2 days, I'm sure the coaches will be. They'll be burning the midnight oil. And I say that, but there are going to be some players who are going to be in there because these guys have pride, and they'll be in there, and they'll do some film study probably even on Christmas morning or Christmas evening. They won't take it completely off because there's a game to be won. And regardless of what your record is, and right now, Saints are 5-10, and they're not going to the playoffs, and they know it. But you've got guys in there who are pros to the end, who, DeMario Davis saying, look, you got to play for something bigger than yourself when you're in these situations. And you do have to. You got to, there are guys in there who work, and nobody expects to be 5-10. Mm-hmm. Nobody puts in 5-10, quote unquote, work during the week. Everybody feels like the more I work, we're going to turn this around. We're going to get the result we want. And when you don't get it, it's really devastating emotionally because you got to go back to the bottom of the mountain and try to climb it again. So I can see from that standpoint, but these guys are prideful. None of these guys are accustomed to losing. None of these guys grew up losing, whether in, bitty ball or little league or whatever you want to call it, park ball. They didn't lose in junior high. They didn't lose in high school. They probably didn't lose in college. And now you get to the NFL and you have this experience, and it's tough to deal with. And it starts snowballing on you, but deep down, you're still the guy that made it to the NFL. A lot of them against a decent amount of odds, and you get into the NFL and you're not accustomed to losing, so you don't want to swallow that. And so hopefully it's one of those things where, you got 2 games left. You're playing a bad team in the Raiders, let's be honest, but you got 2 games left and you've got some pride about it. You want to have a good showing because no matter what anybody says, the film is still rolling. The results still matter, and somebody is evaluating you, whether it's your organization mm-hmm. or another organization that might want to delve into you next year. Somebody's looking at film. So what you put on film is who you are in the NFL. And so, like I said, DeMario said, hey, you're playing for something bigger than yourself. Well, you might be playing for your teammates. You're playing for, extending your career. You're playing for wanting to go out right this season. You're playing because you want to give the Saints fans something to take into the offseason decent in their mouth. I mean, this has been a really difficult season because remember this, we're talking about a team that started 2-0.
Yeah.
2-0. So that's 3-10 since then.
Yeah. It was definitely, I want to say, like polar opposites of the way that the season started and the way it's felt at times. It was really, everybody was really happy, excited, high on things, going to the Super Bowl. And now it's been difficult. And I'm sure the fans have had a hard time with that. It's it's funny that you mentioned you got to find something else to play for, but listening to the pregame show last night on the radio with Deuce McAllister and Mike Haas, Deuce was saying that at this point you're playing for a job, which is a tough way to put it. But as you mentioned, you are kind of auditioning every day in this league for where you're at or another team. So whatever gets you going, hopefully we can see that on Sunday. I know Spencer Rattler mentioned that, you want to leave, like you said, the fans with something in the last home game, at least, when hopefully end their home games on a high note with the win on Sunday. Then you will have one more left at Tampa Bay after the new year. I don't think that this team has ever lacked effort. That's something that all the players and Coach Rizzi have all said as well, that people are still fighting. They're still trying. They still care, and they're still in this for each other. So hopefully, they can get some things worked out this week and we can come out on the high note on Sunday.
Yeah, need to finish off the right way at home, hopefully, and then what happens in the offseason happens in the offseason, but the offseason isn't here yet. You still got 2 games to play. You still got 2 games you get paid to play, and you got 2 games that you really need to be professional about. So hopefully that's one of those things that they can actually do it in these last 2 games.
Yeah. Well, JD, thank you so much for the time. Enjoy your holiday, and I will see you soon.
All right, we'll see you. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Saints podcast. Join us 3 times per week on NewOrleansSaints.com, the Saints mobile app, or you can download the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Saints podcast.